Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. The Draft Professor is a group of podcasters bringing you daily draft podcasts and is home to the only dynamic mock draft simulator which allows fans to mock draft against other fans. The Draft Professor Simulator features a first-round challenge, 5 unique one-round drafts. The Draft Professor Simulator features a second-round challenge, 10 unique 2-round drafts. All mock drafts are always picking against the fans and draft analysts which use the simulator. Every mock, every pick, every time. The Draft Professor also features ranked players functionality, where you can rank your favorite players at every position. Optionally, you can add tiers to your rankings to show what round you have the players graded in. The Draft Professor also features Draft a Team functionality, which allows users to snake draft a team of 22 players to demonstrate your my guys, compare player strengths, and discuss draft prospects in a way no other mock draft simulator can. Thank you for tuning in to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. This episode will begin shortly. Well, good evening, everybody. My name's Jim. I'm joined by David and Cole. And Cole, welcome back. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing pretty good. David, it's your first podcast with us. Welcome to the channel. How are you?
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm doing great. Looking forward to watching this national championship game while we do this as well. So it's going to be a fun little dual task for us.
Absolutely. And we are welcome to chime in on the national championship game. It is on the TV behind me, but my monitor is so big I can't actually see it. So people are welcome to provide feedback. So this podcast got put together a couple different ways. So Cole had some players that he hadn't finished his evaluation on, and I'm like, well, we can podcast that. And then as I was looking for more people to podcast, I found David. So here we are, and this is Cole's and David's first podcast together, but we've been doing this on this channel at this point what feels like for the last 6 months. So we're just going to be going through some defensive line prospects. These are probably most of the guys that we're going to cover today are going to be mid. But as we progress through, doing this again next week, you'll see some more day 2 guys and more guys that somebody hasn't finished evaluating yet.
Yeah.
So with that said, we are going to start today's episode with Jamaree Caldwell from Oregon. And Cole, what did you see as you were finishing your evaluation of Mr. Jamaree Caldwell?
Yeah, obviously you see the size, and this is a clear one technique, zero technique over the center type of defensive tackle. This is probably top 1 or 2 nose tackle in the entire class. For a guy that big, he does have some pretty nice lateral movement skills. And when you watch him, his hands are very powerful when he gets underneath your shoulder pads. He'll take blocks, and this is a guy that you really, really want to see kind of be a 2-gapping nose tackle for a team, and he has the potential to do that. Personally, I have a 3rd-round grade on Caldwell, and I'm not sure exactly if he's going to an all-star game or which one he is going to, but I know if he is, he's going to go out there and kind of demonstrate how much of a monster he is, whether it's in the run game or the passing game, which is something you don't really see with nose tackles, is some pass rush upside, and with Caldwell, you are getting that. It's kind of like that if you don't get Kenneth Grant in round 1 or round 2, you're going to want to take Jamaree Caldwell in round 3 or round 4.
Cool. David.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, he's a kid that spent 2 years at Houston, and then he transfers to Oregon for 2024. And ironically, like Cole said, this is a nose tackle all day. You put him over center, you let him 2-gap, and he does it at a pretty high level. Houston did not use him in that manner. And I think part of the reason why he transferred to Oregon, I don't know this for a fact, was that they were going to use him in what would be his NFL role. Some of these programs do a much better job preparing these guys for the next level than others. And over his first 2 years at Houston, He played the A-gap 13 times combined over 2 years. He played 167 snaps in that role in 2024 alone with Oregon. And ironically, we saw his pass rush numbers skyrocket. If we don't have 2024 on tape, we're not labeling this guy anything more than a 6th or 7th round pick, because the NFL does not value this kind of defensive tackle the way they used to. You have to offer either something as a pass rusher, or you need to be an absolute dominant force in the run game. And what we saw, and I think this really did save his grade, 25 pressures. He had almost a 25% pressure rate. And that's a really high number from that role. I mean, you don't see that often. So now you have the facts that he can impact the pass game, and we already know he can 2-gap. So I'm not quite round 3 on him, because I think athletically he's just a very limited player. We see a guy that's not very fast. He's, average quickness. The get off is okay. He's just a really strong, powerful guy. But when you make him laterally adjust, you see him end up on the ground a lot. And I still don't know if his pass rush repertoire will fully translate to the next level. And as much as I like him and I want a guy like this on my team, I probably would sit round 5 on him, maybe a round 4 if you think you can get some sort of pass rush out of him. But he has the opportunity of a lifetime to shine. He'll be at the Senior Bowl. I'll be down there next week, and he's one of the guys I have circled on him. This is a guy that had multiple pressures in each of his last 5 games. So it seemed like as he started to figure things out, it's like, okay, we got something here.
So I'll see you at the Senior Bowl next week too, David.
Awesome. Great. Looking forward to meeting you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys 3 defensive tackles and compare and contrast their games. I'm not suggesting that they're comps for each other. I'm suggesting that they're likely one techs. And that's T'Vondre Sweat, Tyleik Williams, and Jamaree Caldwell. Can you kind of compare and contrast, like, which one would you have rated highest, second, third, and why do you grade them or rate them that way? Cole.
Yeah, so I'd probably go Tyleik Williams number 1, T'Vondre Sweat number 2, and then Caldwell number 3. And it's not really anything against Caldwell. It's just I think Sweat was a pretty good prospect coming out. He offered a little bit more juice as a pass rusher. And while, again, with the size concerns, he was bigger. I forget what his listed weight was coming out after the combine, but he was a bigger guy, and you saw him get gassed on film. To where Tyleik Williams, who I had number 1 in that set, while he does get gassed, he's not quite as big, but he kind of offers more of a higher floor, and you're going to get a really solid pro out of Tyleik Williams, where Jamaree Caldwell, you're not exactly sure what you're going to get. And I also like Tyleik Williams' positional flexibility a little bit more. I think he can kick out all the way to a 3-tech, maybe a 4-eye. I doubt it, but he could play at least a 3 technique. And he's not really going to be limited to that nose tackle role like T'Vondre Sweat and Jamaree Caldwell will be and are.
So, David, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, kind of echo what Cole said there. I mean, I probably would put Sweat up there only because of what we saw in Sweat's final year at Texas. We saw him take his pass rush to the next level. We never really saw Tyleik do that. But Tyleik is a safer prospect. I'll say that. I agree that you know exactly what you're getting out of Tyleik Williams the second you draft him. He's been the same player 4 straight years for one of the best defensive programs in the country. And he has a little bit more alignment versatility, as Cole touched on. But Sweat, to me, I mean, he's just one of the biggest humans I've ever seen play football and move at that speed. And we saw him do it this year. I track every rookie from week 1 through week 18 across the league. And Sweat was just one of the most reliable, consistent forces in the NFL, both run and pass. I think he surprised people with his pass rush ability. And if he can Dexter Lawrence himself, meaning, hey, go from bull rusher to develop some rush moves, he's going to be a special player. I don't see special potential in Caldwell or Williams, but I am confident Williams will be around for a long time.
Got it. Okay. Next defensive lineman, Tomka Hemingway from South Carolina. So, Cole, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tomka Hemingway is one of those stars on the South Carolina defensive line. You're going to get a guy that has some pass rush juice and alignment versatility, like we talked about with Tyreek Williams. Not necessarily a pure nose tackle at 290, but he's a guy that you can maybe flex in at a one tech and every once in a while. I'm not sure how many snaps he played in the A gap. He's got long arms and he's got really strong arms. You're not really going to see him kind of get tossed around like a rag doll that often on film. And when you watch him, he does offer some juice as a pass rusher. You kind of see that first step get off, and you're like, okay, I can kind of work with something here. But it's just not overall as consistent as you would hope. And that kind of brings me down to like that like third round, fourth round type of grade like I have on Jamaree Caldwell, where I just want to see a little bit more consistency. But I really do like the ceiling of Tomka Hemingway. And when you're on a good defensive line like that, it's not necessarily the easiest to go out and stand out on those reps like he did when you have Kyle Kennard or Dylan Stewart or TJ Sanders making plays on that defensive line as well.
Cool. David.
So fun fact about this kid, Hemingway, was that he was a big-time high school basketball player. And he was originally a defensive end when he showed up to South Carolina. So you start just kind of starting the image, the story of this kid, what you're going to be telling yourself. It's like, we're not talking about a normal athlete for the defensive tackle position. We're talking about a guy that was athletic enough to average over 20 points a game in basketball in high school, was being recruited by Division I programs, and then he shows up to the SEC and he's a 4-3 defensive end. I mean, just think about what it takes to be athletically in that. And then he starts gaining weight. They start putting him inside. He starts having some success, and he's got over 24 pressures 3 straight years. And, I love the lockout. I love the ability to play low. I think he's got extra length for what you would assume his frame would have. He's got heavy hands. I do think he was the best, second best defensive tackle on that team. He was surrounded by a lot of talent. And one thing I didn't love that kind of sticks in my head, and this matters when projecting to the next level, is that he didn't win a lot of pure one-on-one matchups. Like these real true pass sets where these guys take a 5 to 7 step drop. They take 2.5 seconds to get the ball out. His success rate there just was not very high, but he plays like he's on fire. He's a high engine guy. He makes a lot of pursuit and hustle plays. And, you combine that with the athletic background, which is very uncommon to have what he has in his history athletically. There's a ceiling with him. He had a stretch of games, when he played against the SEC this year. I think it was 5 out of 7 games. He had 3 or 4 pressures per game. And a lot of that came just down to grit, secondary effort. And, sometimes that works in the NFL, sometimes it doesn't, but it does keep you on a roster. So this guy will be a roster player. I think he's a rotational guy. I can't put round 3 on someone unless I project them to be a starter at the next level. I think he's a quality backup. So he'll probably be round 4, round 5 for me.
Okay, so Hemingway, if you had to compare and contrast Riley Mills, TJ Sanders, Tomka Hemingway, who do you have highest on your board? Who's middle? Who's the lowest? David.
I like Mills. I'm a big Mills guy. I just think he's a pro in every sense of the word. He does a lot of little things right, and he's a much better athlete. I mean, he's going to destroy the combine and pro day. And I don't overreact to that, but it does matter to me because at where we are sitting right now, we're projecting of what these guys will be in 3 to 5 years. It's not necessarily what are they right now, right? What are they going to be? And at that athletic base, it does matter because everybody in the NFL is such a freak that if you're not, you have to be spectacular in other areas. And I think Riley Mills is one of those freaks, and he does a lot of the little things well. So he's my number 1 among that trio. And like I said, TJ Sanders was the best pure pass rusher on that defensive line for South Carolina. So I would give him the edge over Hemingway.
Do you have Sanders and Hemingway in the same tier? Or do you have Sanders a round higher?
I have him a round higher.
Yep. Got it.
Yeah. I'm Riley Mills, like round 2, round 3. Sanders, I'm round 3, round 4. Hemingway, I'm more round 4, round 5.
Got it. And Cole, how about you? How do you see Mills, Sanders, and Hemingway?
Yeah, I have Sanders in that round 2 and 3 area, and I have Riley Mills in that pure round 3 area. And then Tomka Hemingway kind of more in that like round 4 area. While I do have a 3-4 on him, it's really a fourth round grade on Hemingway.
Got it. Okay. Next player, Simeon Barrow from Miami. So, David, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, really fun player. It's funny to me that Michigan State, this is where that kid started off at, and him and Derek Harmon from Oregon were on the same roster there, and they still couldn't quite figure it out. And they complement each other very well. Barrow, to me, he's been a fun player. There were flashes where I didn't know much about him early in the year, and I saw a couple of flashes, and I'm like, this looks a little bit like Jair Newton from Illinois that went in the second round to Washington. And really, once he got up to speed of recovering from the foot injury, he had a really solid rookie season. And I remember he had a lot of unique tape to him. I mean, he's not a very big guy. He's not going to measure in with long arms. Neither of these guys are. Barrow and Newton did not. But their movement traits are really hard for offensive linemen to lock onto. He's built low to the ground. He's got like that squatty frame. He's got excellent knee bend. So he's just a tough guy to square up. But then you kind of see his ability to change direction and alter his weight without, falling off balance. It's kind of like a rare thing. I mean, he's not a big guy. I think he's going to weigh in around 290 with short arms. And that's an end all for some defensive line coaches. They won't touch you if you don't hit their measurement requirements. But somebody will like this guy enough to say, hey, I think you can be our 3-tech, or I think you can be our first pass rushing interior guy off the bench. And that, to me, I'm a pass rush bias guy. That could put you in round 3. He'll probably end in that round 3-4 area, but he has a profile that some GMs and coaches love at the next level. And it's just going to take one team to overdraft him a little bit.
Cool. Cole, what do you think?
Yeah, Barrow is probably my favorite pure defensive lineman we have on this list tonight. Nice. Look, he had 5.5 sacks in the ACC, which is not easy to do from an interior defensive line standpoint. And he had, I believe, 4 and 3.5 back-to-back years at Michigan State in the Big Ten. It's his pass rush numbers from the interior are really, really nice. And like David said, he has freakish movement skills. That lateral movement is not something you see often from those big guys in the interior. And while he does kind of have T-Rex arms, he gets low to the ground and he knows how to use what length he does have, even if it does lack a little bit. He has a good center of gravity and his core strength is really nice, and he can toss offensive guards off of him. And he has some good reps in the run game at a guy at a smaller size at about 290, 289, 88 type range. Mm-hmm. And like, this isn't a guy I'm going to say take top 75, but he's a guy that I can totally see going in the top 100 to top 110 easily in April.
Yep. And so on the channel, we try to cover players in the top 175. So what I'm hearing is with all 3 guys we've covered so far, you're definitely seeing all of them round 5 or better.
Yeah. Yes. I think the kid from Oregon is the only one that he's got to have a strong week at the Senior Bowl next week. That could be a make or break for him. I think he's the only one that would be on the bubble.
Got it. Okay. Next player. Quandarrius Robinson from Alabama. So, Cole, I know that you have the Alabama sign right behind you, so I'm going to have you start off with Quandarrius Robinson from Alabama.
Yeah, so just a little background to the Q. He came in as a high 4-star on some sites and a 5-star on others. He sat forever behind a stacked edge group. He sat through Darius Turner, Will Anderson, Chris Braswell, etc. I can go on. He sat and he never transferred. He didn't waver. Kid has a great work ethic and he's an awesome leader from everybody I've spoken to in that program. Look, he got hurt and it was a tough injury for a team that really needed a big edge presence like Q had this year. He had 4 sacks before that week 6 or 7 matchup against LSU, and he was balling out. And you're going to see he has some nice pass rush bursts. He gets hands on. He knows how to use his leverage. He has longer arms. He's strong. He has a nice core, solid movement skills. And then the run game, it kind of dips a little bit. But overall, he's a really well-rounded player. And you can tell he was coached throughout that Nick Saban coaching tree. He's a good guy. He's a guy that I wish didn't get hurt. And I wish I had a full season worth of tape on him because the snaps are limited. And that's a big concern. And kind of a reason why I could totally see him not getting selected until round 6 or round 7. But overall, I really do like Q Robinson, and I have a 5th on him. And I could totally see a team taking a chance earlier. And if it wasn't for that injury, we could be talking about Q Robinson in the top 75 to 90 picks. But unfortunately, he did get hurt. And I believe it was an arm injury.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately for an edge rusher who, like, arms are a big thing, it's a bad injury. So I hope he recovers, and I hope he comes back fast, and I hope a team takes a chance on him in that round 5 area.
So David, how about you?
I was going to start it off with the way he started off with. I mean, this kid walked into an Alabama outside linebacker / edge defender room that had Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell. I mean, what do you do in that situation? I mean, these guys are either first-round picks or immediate starters. I mean, Braswell also had a great year with Tampa Bay in a rotational role. So he's just sitting behind pros until 2024. But something you can look back on 2020 to 2023, he was a great special teamer. I mean, this guy took a lot of pride in his role on that team. And I'm telling you this right now, coaches love that, especially when you're not a first or second round pick, because you're playing special teams almost always. And you're gonna be relied upon in that. This guy is not going to be drafted as a starter, but he'll be active on game day because of what he could do on special teams. He's already proven it. Some of these guys come to the league and they're not used to having to earn their stripes. And the quickest way to earn the respect of your teammates and coaches will be on special teams. He already has it down. Until 2024, that was his role. And he comes out and gets 19 pressures on 110 pass rush snaps. And that's a really solid percentage. And what it looked like was what you want it to look like. He has great burst, he's got great bend, and he's long. I'll sign up for that any day of the week. And then you throw in some of the actual football skill set, techniques, hand usage, variety of rush moves. He plays really hard. He hustles after guys. He's got great closing speed. I mean, you watch him chase down a Carson Beck type. That's SEC speed right there. I mean, Carson Beck has got an 8-yard head start on to the sideline as he's looking downfield, and within a second he's on top of him. And that's the kind of speed that translates to the next level. His lack of experience and the fact that this is an incredibly strong edge group in this draft could bump him down a little bit. Not the biggest guy, not very stout against the run, even though he does try hard. He's just a guy that gets displaced a lot when he's up against NFL caliber blockers. So right now you're looking at a pass rush specialist in a scheme that uses outside linebackers, not defensive ends. So I just think there's going to be a limited amount of teams that are really, truly interested in him. And he's going to be far down the stack because the inexperience, the injury, and it's just a really strong group. So you could see this guy go day 3, no question. I think he's a top 100 talent, but so are a lot of guys in this draft that play on the edge. So I think he's going to be someone that goes in their 4th round. If his medicals aren't clean, it might be the 5th round.
Got it. Okay, next player, Darius Alexander from Toledo. So David, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, I mean, this guy is he'll be at the Senior Bowl as well. He's coming from a program that last year, Kenyon Mitchell from Toledo was at the Senior Bowl, ended up being a first rounder. So there's eyes on this program, and he's got a lot of NFL, just like Kenyon Mitchell has a lot of NFL traits in his game. He's very long, he's very powerful, and he's got surprising foot quickness. He gets his feet off the ground in a hurry. And I mean, he has one of the most impressive pick sixes this year. I think it was a 58-yarder. He jumped up in the air. He kind of dropped back into his own blitz. He broke a tackle. He hurdled an offensive lineman that went after his knees, and then he broke away from everyone that was in pursuit. Just a really quality athlete. And this is a program with the transfer portal now. The way that this works, they normally get scooped up by somebody, but there's something in the water there because Quinyon Mitchell, he stayed there as well. This guy could have been, without a doubt, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia. He is that caliber of a player. He would start there. And, he's got 80 pressures over the last 2 years. But the best part of his game is he can two-gap. I mean, he's an elite run defender in the MAC. I know, there's not many offensive linemen there that are going to be playing on Sundays. But He plays all over the line. And to me, this is the kind of guy that the Patriots love to get, the Steelers, the Ravens. He's just physical, and he can play 5 spots along the defensive lines for those hybrid fronts. So I think this guy has a good shot at being a second-round pick.
Cool. Cole, what do you think?
Yeah, pretty much everything David said is exactly what I was going to say in my scouting report. He's an athletic, big dude, and that's always a fun watch when you have a guy that has crazy foot speed and lateral movement. He can two-gap really well. Again, you worry about the competition level, but he's going to the Senior Bowl in a week, so we get to see some good caliber offensive linemen he's going against, especially in the interior. When you look at guys, because I know for a fact some of those tackles that are going down there are going to be tried out at guard. It's just kind of how it is in this class. So I know Darius Alexander is going to get a bunch of good reps and a bunch of good competition down there in Mobile. So kind of to that Steelers point, my comp for him is he's a little bit like Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin to me. And he's a guy I can totally see being taken within the top 75 picks. And he is a top 65 player on my board. So I do have that second round to third round type grade on him. I think he can go early third as a floor and late second as a ceiling.
Cool. Okay, so why don't we pause for a second for a little bit of a commercial. So Cole, you want to tell everybody who you are and how they can find your content?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at all lowercase ColeP_NFL. I post everything about the draft. Sometimes I post think pieces like I did today about quarterbacks. I kind of post everything about football. It's what I love to do. I can post film breakdowns, mock drafts, or any of the sort.
Cool. And David, want to let everybody know kind of who you are, and welcome to the channel, by the way.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I've been with Our Lads Scouting Services. It's one of the oldest in the business. I mean, the founding fathers go way back before I started with them. That's for sure. I mean, it's a 40-year-old company. These guys started right there with Mel Kiper back in the day. And, we're headlined by a former NFL scout, Dan Shanka. There's a staff of us, and we come up with consensus grades. We still print out an NFL draft guide. We take a lot of pride in the fact that we still print out a draft guide with over 300 ports every year, where everyone seems like they're going to PDFs and online because it's cheaper. But I'm a big believer in having, a physical hard copy book, so we can get a little less time on the screen and pick up a book every now and then and read pages. But it's also a great resource to have. I have the past 10 guides ever since I started working with them that I'll look back on guys that we wrote up 10 years ago when they get signed by a team, and just kind of like what we write about this guy, what we're wrong about him. So you can find me on my Twitter at rlads_sci. I put out a 3-day per week newsletter, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, covers the draft, the NFL, and then a hybrid. We just put out our first mock draft at rlads.com. You can find it under the draft hub.
Fantastic. And then you can follow the channel at NFL Draft Fanatic, no I in Fanatic. And this channel has daily draft content. So we'll do scouting report podcasts like this. This is the warm-up show. So at 9:15, Jake and Josh and myself are going to be diving into the DNA of the Commanders. So how did they build their team, free agents, draft picks, the GM head coach structure. And each afternoon this week or each evening this week, we're doing a different team. So I believe the order is Commanders, then the Eagles, then the Chiefs, then the Bills. So that's what's kind of on our slate Monday through Thursday this week. On Friday, we have our first 32 GM mock draft. So if you're listening and you want to participate in the mock draft, there are still some teams that are unclaimed. So you are more than welcome to get involved. We want to bring the draft to the people. We don't just want you to listen. We would invite you to engage and participate because that's what makes this fun for all of us. So again, daily draft content. Subscribe on YouTube, like on YouTube, follow on X or Twitter, and you will see more content coming at you than probably any other 2 channels combined. So with that being said, we have 3 players left. Okay. YaYa Black from Iowa. So Cole, do you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, so with YaYa Black, you know exactly what you're getting when you sign up and you draft him. This is a pure run-stopping defensive tackle. He can take on double teams. He can get low and really really make sure that linebacker gets to flow over into that gap. I kind of see some inconsistencies with his first step and his pass rushing impact, as he only had, I believe, a sack and a half this year. And his sack numbers overall are not great, which isn't the end all be all, but I don't believe his pressure numbers are great either. You kind of see it on tape. He's just not the best in pass rushing situations. It's just kind of how it is. And I really wish that you did see a little bit more. And I really do struggle with a guy like YaYa Black to find some enjoyment in watching his tape. I love seeing a good run stopper, but he doesn't offer much juice, and he's not some crazy athletic freak with a wicked first step and a strong punch. He's kind of a slow mover, stay in your gap. He's disciplined in his gap, and he just does his role, and he knows his role, and that's exactly what you're going to get with him. I have a 6-round grade on YaYa Black, and I could totally just see a team taking him to come in and be a depth defensive lineman, bring him in on the goal line, kind of stuff some gaps, et cetera, et cetera. That's really what you're going to get with him.
Cool. David?
Yeah, he reminds me of a player that the Giants drafted a few years ago. His name Jordan Riley, kind of bounced around multiple programs. Just a massive dude. I mean, everything about him is big. I mean, his legs, his hips, his arms, his hands. But they're like Cole said, there's not much to him, and there's value in a guy like this on your depth chart, not as a starter, but a guy that can come in and like, hey, I need my guy to get a breather. Can you not get crushed against the run? I mean, can you at least hold your ground? And he'll do that. He had a career high 7.5 tackles for a loss this year, and what I saw different in his tape in 2024. Compared to last year, because last year I thought there was a shot he would come out. So I've been watching him last year. He got a lot better at shedding blockers. He always gets hands on first. He's got great length. So he normally wins that initial battle of, hey, stand the blocker up, control the engagement. But one thing we haven't really seen until this year was his ability to shed that block and take down the ball carrier between the tackles. So we saw a little bit more range out of him, a little bit more, I want to call it playmaking out of him. But you're not going to get anything out of him as a pass rusher. And again, like I said earlier, that's going to limit the grade. I mean, you're day 3 immediately unless you're dominant, and he's not. He plays high. There's stretches of football games where he just doesn't do anything. He's just kind of a guy taking up space. And again, he doesn't lose a lot, but he doesn't win a lot. And to me, in the NFL, if I'm projecting what you're going to do at the next level, you need to win a lot. And he simply doesn't. So I think he's going to be a late day 3 pick. But he will get drafted, and I do think he could be useful in some schemes, just as a guy that you feel comfortable going in and backing your starters up.
Okay, so now we're winding up for the big finish, and I'm sure Bill Sparks in the chat is going to have something to say about Shemar Turner. But David, you want to kick off Shemar Turner?
Funny story about this kid. Prior to the season, I put out a preseason top 32, and it's really – you can't hold me to it because I watch a little bit of these guys over summer leading up to, and, unless I watch them a lot the year prior, it's not something I just like to kind of put some names out there for us all to look on. He was in my preseason top 32 because of the fact that he's so versatile. He plays outside, he plays inside. He had a career high in pressures last year. He seemed to really turn it on towards the end of the year. He plays hard. But this was one of my bigger disappointments of the season. Finished with 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks on a loaded defensive line. I mean, there's 2 DNs on that roster that are going to probably be first-round picks. And again, it's hard to always measure production. Those guys simply get there first, but it was the tape that bothered me with Turner. He's another guy that's probably going to measure him with really short arms, and it shows up. He has a hard time disengaging. He gets stalled out by really quality NFL caliber blockers. He doesn't show any secondary rush moves. I mean, when he gets a pressure or when he breaks free, it's just secondary effort. He's low to the ground. He's a good athlete. He can really escape a blocker. But when it comes to really truly beating him with rush moves and secondary rush moves, he's a rotational type. So as of right now, I have a round 3 or round 4 grade on him, and it could end up being worse.
Yep. So Cole, how about you? What do you have on Shemar Turner?
Yeah, I have a round 3 to 4 on him as well. I don't really think he was suited for the role that he was in, but again, they had 2 first-round caliber edge rushers, and They had another guy, Cassius Howell, who I'm not sure if he came out, but he has a draftable grade from me. And it's way easier to rotating guys like Shemar Turner with Albert Regis than it is to get 4 edge rushers kind of on the field, because you can't do that. There's never a set where you can get Cassius Howell, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, and Shemar Turner out there. So I do not like the usage on how he was used, but again, it just had to be done. Somebody had to bounce inside, and it unfortunately was Shemar Turner. He was a guy I was higher on this summer. I liked the juice that he played with kind of in that 2023 season, and I liked what he offered as a pass rusher and as a run defender. He moves well, but there was something about the added weight that he put on that that 2023 tape is a glaring image of the 2024, and it just wasn't as good this year. The quality of the plays he made weren't as good. The amount of plays he made weren't as much, and he all as a whole kind of just fell off as a player, which again, not sure if that was because of he's just not really suited to play on the interior, or if he's just not suited to add that extra weight that he had to add on. It's a domino effect. So not sure if he's going to lose some weight for his pro day in his combine to kind of show teams that he should be playing edge. But this is a guy I like the athletic upside, but I question the fall off in the level of tape from 23 to 24.
Reminds me a little bit of what Texas A&M had a couple years ago. I think you said you have a Texas A&M fan that's watching right now, but DeMarvin Leal from a few years ago was a similar physical profile, around 6'3", 6'4", 290. He was an outside linebacker. He always kind of looked weird out there. Wasn't ideal. I think he went in the 3rd round to Green Bay a couple years ago. And it just kind of seems like a guy that didn't really truly have a position. And the fact that Turner kind of got moved around a little bit and he did not respond, it's like, yeah, maybe the move is to go outside, but I'll tell you what, he's not a good enough athlete to play on the outside at the next level unless it's a very specific situation. And, these kinds of guys, being a good college player does not always translate to being a good NFL player. I just don't know what trait Turner has that's going to really make him stand out at the next level. But, the contrary to that is that he does have quality tape back from 2023. There is something there, but it's a gamble. And it's hard for me to get behind a gamble unless you're physically gifted, which he's not, before day 3.
So it's interesting, David, that you brought up DeMarvin Leal, right?
Yep.
So this is at least the second time that we've covered Turner with a scouting report. And Owen said that he was traumatized by Texas A&M players because of Leal. And he said, Turner, he's like, was I watching a clone of the same player? Yeah. So that was funny. So here's a question for both of you. Turner, do you think his best fit is inside at edge? And do you think his best fit is 4-3 or 3-4? Cole?
Depends on what type of 3-4 we're running. If it's a tight front, sure. I could totally see that, like 4 eyes, zeros, ones, whatever. I really struggle to see him playing anything outside of the tackle shoulder. So anything past a 5 technique, I really cannot see him doing. This is not a 3-4 outside linebacker by any means. This is a guy that you need to be playing on that 4-eye to like 5 tech, loose 3 type of area. So depends on the scheme. If we're going 4-3, I'd probably say 3 technique. But if we're going 3-4, I'd say that 4 to 4-eye range.
How about you, David?
I would like to see him. I mean, this is what I wrote in my preseason report on him. I would like to see him just in a pure 3 tech role. Like, let him shoot the gap. I mean, and the amount of snaps that I saw him just head up on the guard and kind of had the 2 gap, like, that's just not his game. And that's where he gets stalled out, where he's got the juice to win off the ball with his athletic ability only. But I'd like to have some space in front of him rather than a body. So I would love to see him in a 3 tech role in a 4-man front.
Cool. Hey, and last player, Jordan Burch from Oregon. So, David, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, fun, really fun player, fun prospect. Another guy. This is the second one. This was a Division I basketball recruit as well, coming out of high school. He's going to measure somewhere between 6'5" and 6'6", 280 to 290. He's the kind of guy that wants to, you want him getting off the bus first. I mean, he looks like a football player, and 8.5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. He missed 4 games this year. Got a little nicked up. He came back late in the year. And I actually tweeted about this because I started watching his tape in October. I had watched him at South Carolina a couple of years ago. He's made that Bruce Feldman freak list every year. Just the combination of height, weight, speed. He's going to run in the 4.6s probably at 290 pounds, rare. But I threw the name Jared Verse out when I was watching him because Jared Verse, to me, a guy that I think was a little underrated last year at this time. Easy for me to say now. He's going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. But we liked him because he has the one element that I think a lot of good quality college pass rushers do not have: power. If you're going to be an elite pass rusher from the outside in the NFL, you have to have a power element to your game. You have to have it. And a lot of these guys don't. I mean, James Pierce Jr., I have a 2nd-round grade on him. Everyone wants to talk about his broad jump and his 40. He's got no power. And I want nothing to do with a guy like that. Maybe he'll work out, maybe he won't. But I would take a guy like Jordan Burch because there's things that I think can be developed. And he has showed enough beyond power that he's not a one-trick pony. But he is, don't get me wrong, he is a guy that wants to run through you, not around you. He doesn't want to waste time trying to run around you. He can bend, he can flatten the edge. He's done it multiple times, but he wants to run through you. It's the quickest route from where he's starting to where the quarterback is. And that's what made Jared Verse special this year. 77 pressures, 5th in the NFL, most among rookies by a mile. And it's because of how powerful his hands are and his mentality. And I see a lot of that in Jordan Burch's game. It wasn't as consistent. He didn't make a ton of splash plays. There's not a lot of pass rush moves in his arsenal, but I want to work with this guy. I've liked him for multiple years now.
Cole, how about you?
Yeah, so when I was watching Jordan Burch in the summer, I was a little bit uninterested. I didn't know how well he'd kind of come into 2024. That was just kind of what I had taken away through 2 or 3 games. And then probably middle October, that early November range, I watched a game of him and I was like, okay. I watched the Ohio State game and I was like, I really do kind of like what he's showing here. So then I watched maybe a half of another game, just kind of got caught up on some other prospects, and then had mentioned him to you for the show, and I had finished up another 3 games in the past week on him, and I was blown away. He moves for a guy that's 290. He moves all right. It's not anything crazy, but for a guy that's 290, you're like, I can work with that. Like Dave said, he is strong. He has long arms and he wants to hurt you. This is a guy that you get in your face, Matt. He'll get in your face, man. And he'll just fuck you on a rep and kind of just run through your face. I love his power aspect of his game in it. I've seen some reps where he showed a little bit of finesse skills, and it's not anything crazy, but to know he has a little bit more of that 2-dimensional type aspect to his game where he's going to run through your face, but he can maybe throw a little bit of a rip at you or kind of move outside and get a little bit splash play on the splash pass rush rep. I have a 2nd-round grade on Jordan Burch. I'm really high on him. I kind of feel like this is a guy, if you miss out on Shemar Stewart out of Texas A&M in the 1st round, you double back down and you get Jordan Burch. If you really like Shemar Stewart, you're going to love Jordan Burch. Really, this is a guy I can totally see playing a 5 technique at 6'6", 290. I'm not really too nervous about him having to get kicked inside because of any movement deficiencies or anything like that. He doesn't really get displaced in the run game. This is going to be one hell of a motherfucker to move if you get him on a kick out block, run some counter, and you try to move him some split zone. You're not going to be able to do it with the tight end or even a guard most of the time. So I really like Jordan Burch, and I'm excited to kind of see what he does in the NFL and see where he gets drafted in April.
Okay. So also to kind of summarize, there were 3 groups of players that we had, right? So the first 2, Cole said, I haven't evaluated them yet. And I said, okay, well, let's podcast about it. Turner and Burch, when we covered them the first time, they were high variance. The grades on them, when 2 people gave grades, were really far apart. So I'm like, well, anybody where grades are far apart, we're going to podcast them at least 2 more times, right? So it's kind of cool to see, like, the two of you tended to converge on Burch. I think I heard pretty much the same report from both of you, right? You're seeing him as, like, I would call it like early day 2 kind of thing. And you even said, like, you might even take him higher than Pierce, right? Just from the standpoint of there's certain things in Burch's game that may translate better. Yeah. So like I like being able to, let's say, be on the leading or the bleeding edge of that kind of thing. So that's definitely good to hear. So do you guys have any questions for each other on any of the players?
I mean, I spend all fall on the offensive side of the ball. My main positions for our lads are quarterback, running back, wide receiver. And then once November hits, I start making my way towards the defensive side, and I start off on the defensive line. So there's still a few positions I want to get up to speed on a little bit more, second level, third level type guys. But, I think that Cole would agree with me that this defensive line group is incredibly strong. Last year, we had a very strong offensive line, 25 guys went rounds 1 through 3. We had 9 guys go in the first round alone. I mean, we might see that on the defensive side this year. And in tackles, we might see 9 guys go in the first round. And tackles, I mean, half these guys are going to move inside. So I would just say offensive linemen, you might see 5 or 6. It's kind of just a role reversal from last year. This is a good year to need defensive line talent.
How about you, Cole?
Yeah, this is like David said, it's going to be a very defensive heavy draft, especially in the first round. You're going to see, I could probably count up to 5 edge rushers and maybe 2 to 3 defensive interior guys. Talking about Walter Nolan, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham's an obvious one. I could totally see Derek Harmon slipping in there, Tyleek Williams even. And as to the edge group, obviously you're going to see Abdul Carter. You're probably going to see Mike Green, regardless of what my grade is on Mike Green. You're probably going to see James Pierce. You're probably going to see, I'm blanking, but Shemar Stewart, Nick Scorton.
Yeah, Stewart and Scourton, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to see those guys more than likely. And there's another, I'm not sure how teams feel about Jack Sawyer or Princely Emmanuel or even JT Tuimoloau. I butchered that, but you get the idea. So you could probably see up to 12 guys on the defensive front 7 kind of go in the first round or really close to it in that first 5 to 7 picks of the second round. So it's a really loaded defensive line class for sure.
Okay. So, David, have you evaluated Jared Ivey yet?
From Mississippi?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't see – I know there's a couple guys that like him. I know there's a couple guys in the league that like him because of the triangle numbers. I saw a lot of stiffness. I mean, I watched a lot of Mississippi. I love Princely Emmanuel and I love Walter Nolan. So I saw this guy by mistake, honestly, a few times before I really knew he was a real prospect. And he never stood out to me. He's an NFL player. But again, like I said earlier, this edge group is going to bump a guy like that down. He does have a power game advantage, run defense, hand strength. Maybe that can get him a notch or 2 higher than some of these guys that I personally have graded higher. But to me, there's just a little too much stiffness there for me to think that he can be anything more than a backup at the next level.
Well, and I was about to ask you, Burch or Ivy, but I already have the answer.
Yeah. Burch is for sure.
Yep. Okay. Well, we are going to sign off, let everybody get on to the college football championship. David, it was a pleasure having you on. I hope that we can have you back. Cole, as always, it's awesome just to chat with you and hear your opinions on the players. So hopefully we can set something up again for next Monday. But on behalf of all 30 people podcasting from the Draft Professor, thank you very much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you again on a podcast in about an hour.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mrs. R Relevant, the Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. Please follow the Draft Professor on X at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. Please follow the Draft Professor channel on YouTube at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. We look forward to seeing you on our podcast tomorrow.